Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the creative, artistic side of the tracks, from little indie games all the way up to AAA titles. My name's John, I'm your host. I'm a journalist based out in Reykjavik, Iceland. I quit gaming in 2013, kind of by accident, sold all my consoles when I relocated here. Didn't play for a long time and have picked up gaming again in 2019, and so I've decided to take on a journey of playing lots of games of the year, highly rated titles, cult titles that catch my attention, and new games, and so that's what this podcast is all about. In this episode I'm going to talk about 3 games. The game that has been sucking up most of my attention in the last week is the smash hit sequel, The Last of Us 2. If you listen to the last couple of episodes, you'll know that I recently played The Last of Us original game and was blown away by it. I've dipped into the sequel now. I'm going to do a special episode on it later, but there'll be some first thoughts on that game in this episode. Spoiler-free first thoughts. Before I played that, I also dipped into the Left Behind DLC. It's a little extra epilogue that was added to the first game that fills in a bit of context on Ellie's life before she meets Joel and embarks on the big journey of that first game, and ultimately the second game too. But before the Last of Us chat begins, I'm going to talk about a game that was recommended to me by Akio Kahoshi, a friend on Twitter. He's a part of SwitchCore. He plays and reviews a lot of good games. He's recommended me a couple, and the first game comes from him. It's a sci-fi shooter called Ruiner. The first thing that drew me to Ruiner when I saw that Akio was playing it was I checked out some artwork, and there is a very distinctive kind of shot that comes up when you Google the game of a sort of dark figure with a screen for a face, and on the face it just says "Kill Boss" in digital writing, and straight away I was really intrigued. I was loving the idea of this screen-faced individual, and that's where the game begins. You wake up as this individual in some kind of warehouse, and the only thought that this silent protagonist seems to have is "Kill Boss." And you proceed to go through a kind of a training level where you're taught how to use like a sort of a jack as a weapon, swing a jack as a weapon. You're taught how to dash, to avoid enemies, and a couple other basics. You fight your way through some security guards to the boss that you are supposed to kill. And then just when you get there, everything goes weird, everything turns to static. There's a voice in your head telling you to wake up. What you're seeing starts to disintegrate into digital distortion, and a character appears called Her. She's a hacker. She tells you that your brain has been hacked and that you've been turned into an assassin, and that you have to get out of there. And so you stagger out into the city, and that's the intro of the game. No spoilers there. That's where it all begins. And it's a good hook. Straight off the bat, straight into the action, straight into the story, and a little taste of the combat, a little taste of the game world. When you wake up, you're in the hub world of the game. This is a twin-stick shooter, ostensibly, with a kind of a sort of a very slight story-led role-playing element. Your character never speaks. You can choose responses in conversation sometimes. Nod, shrug, crack knuckles, that sort of thing, or just stay silent. Those are all the options you have. But things do flash up on your face, like when you choose an option. If you crack knuckles, then maybe your face mask says "kill you." If you shrug, maybe your face mask says "we were never friends." The face mask also flashes up sometimes "hello darkness" or "too slow." It's like partially like the face mask is maybe showing your thoughts, maybe showing what your hacker operator is guiding you to do. So it's a nice touch. But you wake up in the hub world, so it's called Renkok. It's a sort of a fictional Southeast Asian city. Looks a little Neo-Tokyo-ish, a lot Neo-Tokyo-ish actually. In fact, the whole kind of aesthetic of this game seems to strongly draw from the threads of Blade Runner and from Ghost in the Shell, and the sort of 1980s cyberpunk noir type of world, which is really appealing. Renkok is quite a detailed little hub world. It's small, but detailed. It's like a few city blocks, basically, with a lot of alleyways, a lot of street life. As you walk past people, they talk and the text appears on the screen, like, so you'll witness kind of couples having arguments, or there's a guy standing on a bridge who's like considering whether or not to jump off it. There are people trying to get into a club, and a bouncer. If you walk up to the bouncer, he'll respond to you and say, "You're not getting in with that weird screen face." So the world kind of responds to you too. You can wander around, you can soak in some of this kind of dystopian atmosphere. There are street gangs, there are homeless people, there are fights breaking out. There's a mechanics workshop, and your co-pilot for this mission is known as Her. She's the hacker who came into your brain and kind of woke you up. She sends you off to a workshop called Mechanics to get like fixed up a little. She tells you that your brain has been co-opted, and that your brother has been taken prisoner, and that your mission, should you choose to accept it, which of course you do, is to get your brother back. And that is the setup for what turns out to be a kind of a hard as nails, super interesting, sort of gloomy, murky twin stick shooter with very tight combat, some mechanics that we'll talk about. So after a little bit of hub world, you're told to go and hop on your motorbike, which will take you to the next level, the next step in the path to finding your brother and getting him back from boss. And so you hop on your bike and away you go. The combat of this game is where most of the gameplay is. It's an isometric twin stick shooter. Your left stick controls your movement, your right stick controls which way you're facing. You can use the shoulder buttons to fire weapons, trigger abilities, that kind of thing. So you're pulling like R2 to fire a weapon, L2 to use different abilities. You have a health bar. When that runs down, you're dead, and your operator says, "Get up, try again," or "That was painful to watch." She kind of reviews what she's just seen. You also have a power bar that depletes as you use special abilities, such as dash, such as a mobile shield, such as overdrive, which temporarily ups your attack potential, but runs down your power energy at the same time. You can also later on unlock more and more and more, like your dash can be improved to be a triple dash. You can also unlock health regeneration, a toggleable health regeneration power. You can drop down energy shields that will block projectiles that are static and hide behind those strategically. You can slow down time by pressing the right stick in. So there are all kinds of elements that are available to you as you open up the skill tree of the game. And this is where Ruiner is interesting, because anytime in the game you can pause, go into your skills menu, and you can add or subtract skill points from any of these abilities. So for example, there is one boss in the game that has a hugely powerful laser that fires at regular intervals and will just wipe you out in seconds. So you might have all of your points poured into, let's say, like some of the basic skill tree stuff, such as ammo lasts longer, melee weapons last longer, bigger maximum health, maybe a little bit of slow motion, a little bit of this and that. But if you reroute all of your skill points into either dash, which gives you iframes, or shield, then you can maybe survive this boss. The blasts last 5 seconds, suddenly your shield can last 5 seconds. Suddenly, dash allows you a couple iframes, so you can skip through the beam if you're feeling like taking on the boss in a more agile way. So you have to reroute your skill points in a thoughtful way, and that's not just for this boss. Throughout the game, all manner of different enemies are thrown at you. There are different troops, different basic troops in different areas of the game, from kind of wandering zombies that attack in mass through to projectile sort of SWAT team style troopers, through to gang members that will swing clubs at you and come at you in numbers, or kamikazes that you have to shoot down before they get to you and explode. And your skill tree and what you've chosen really comes to life in the combat. You have to think logically about each sort of problem. So you wander through the corridors of each area. You come to a kind of a kill room where the doors close and enemies pour out at you, and it's a puzzle. How do you approach it? It's tight combat situation where you're running away to get distance and use ranged weapons, or you're charging in to use your melee weapons. You're thinking about what you can use in your skill tree, what to deploy, and it feels very tight, feels very strategic. It never feels like frustrating, even though you'll die a lot. Your operator calls you puppy and tells you to, get up and get on with it. And you're kind of spurred on to try again. The restarts are quick, restart points are frequent. So even though it's hard, it's forgiving in that way. You get like a sort of a pumping techno soundtrack, like as you can hear in the background now, to drive you on as well. And you'll get some adrenaline in your bloodstream playing this game. It's like addictive, it's compulsive, it's good. It's a good goddamn game is what it is. I have really enjoyed this one. I played through it first on relaxed difficulty and then straight away went in at a higher difficulty, which I never do. Just wanted to get back in there and get some more of that gameplay. You start with like a basic gun called the Ruiner, but you can pick up enemy weapons like a shotgun, which has only 8 shots but very powerful and area effect sort of sawn off blast. There are energy weapons that you charge and unleash like a laser that you can strafe across the entire screen, so it's a really good ranged weapon. There are stun grenades that you can unlock as part of your skill tree, and explosive grenades. One particular boss is like a kind of an intensely powerful melee opponent who comes at you with claws, and the only way that I could get past that boss was to add stun grenades to my skill tree just to slow him down enough for me to take him out with power attacks. And so you're forced to think, you're forced to recalibrate, retool, and it's really compulsive, it's really good. I've spoken to other people that played this game, and they took on some of the challenges with completely different strategies to me. I kind of brute forced it a lot, I slow motioned a lot, I upped my melee attacks a lot. Other people used dash and were more agile, so you can tailor the gameplay to how you want to play it to a high degree. And so you're forced to think, you're forced to recalibrate, retool, and it's really compulsive, it's really good. I had a great time with this game. I really liked the game world, I liked the dialogue, I liked the combat. It's about 5 or 6 hours long. It was made by a developer in Poland called Raycon, and it was picked up and published by Devolver Digital. I think it's around the $20 price point, so it's not going to break the bank. For the 6 hours of gameplay, you also get like replayable value for sure. There is an arena mode. There are some secret areas with other games for you to play. Finally, I'll just touch upon the port. So this game came out originally in 2017 and is just now coming to Switch. When I first saw it, I thought, I wonder if this is going to be one of those games like Hollow Knight that comes out on some consoles and doesn't get the attention it deserves. Comes to Switch where users are a little more kind of hungry for games, and perhaps makes a bit of a splash and gets the attention it deserves. So in theory, Ruiner could be one of those games. The port runs flawlessly. There is no sort of slowdown, stutter, no performance issues whatsoever. The problem with this port is that the environments are quite detailed, they're quite dark, things are quite small. So the handheld screen is maybe not absolutely ideal. Also, I think I preferred playing it on the Pro controller to the Joy-Cons. The way that the shoulder buttons felt and the sort of the stick layout, sticks being closer together on the pad, felt a lot better. Seemed to lend itself more to the way that a twin stick shooter is meant to be played. So despite being a perfect port, I say this is not a perfect Switch game. It's best played docked, with the speakers turned up for the soundtrack. That said, I would absolutely recommend it. Pick it up on Switch, pick it up on Steam. It's also on PS4, but maybe the Switch users are the ones that will be most interested in this. But if you did miss it first time around on those other consoles, I'm going to give this a thorough recommendation. I gave it a 9 out of 10 on my John Reviews Switch Twitter account. So if you want like a challenging, dark and murky cyberpunk twin stick shooter, role-playing elements and a cool dystopian world, good gameplay, good art design, then this game has you covered. That's Ruiner. The next game that I'm going to talk about today is actually a DLC. It's the Left Behind DLC that came out after The Last of Us. It is in itself and of itself kind of a story spoiler for the original Last of Us game. So that's your spoiler warning. If you're yet to play The Last of Us 1, then you're not going to want to hear about this DLC because it fills in some blanks that are left in that storyline. So maybe pause this and come back later. But for everyone else who's played The Last of Us already, I know some people that have actually played The Last of Us 1 and 2 and didn't play the DLC for some reason, one reason or another. But the DLC covers the period in the game when Joel falls off the side of a building. He is impaled on a metal spike. Ellie pulls him through extremely dangerous situation. She becomes the protector. She gets Joel onto the back of the horse and they ride away. In The Last of Us 1, we rejoin the story some time later. Ellie has Joel sort of safely stashed and sewn up his wounds and he's recovering. But some time has obviously passed, and the Left Behind DLC explores that time. It's the story of how Ellie took care of Joel, got him to safety, found a kind of a safe place to hide. And it also tells a little bit of flashback material from before she met Joel. So the main part of the gameplay takes place in a mall. Ellie has managed to drag Joel into a shop, which she's pulled down the security shutter, locked it shut, but she knows that he needs urgent medical help. So she goes out to explore this mall looking for supplies. There is some classic Last of Us scavenger combat gameplay with clickers and humans that she's trying to avoid. Joel and Ellie are being hunted, and so there are people after them. But there's a medical helicopter that has crashed through the roof of the mall and is hanging there in the ceiling. Your task is basically to get up there, get a stash, get back to Joel. It's a really, really nice addition to the original game. I can see why fans of the game would have really appreciated this, because you just wanted some more Last of Us gameplay. But perhaps the most interesting part of this game is the stuff that happens before, as a prelude to The Last of Us 1. So we flash back to Ellie being a child in military school, before she's bitten, before she knows that she's immune, before any of this original story kicks off. And we get the details of Ellie having a kind of an adolescent relationship with a girl called Riley, who is kind of a parallel to Ellie. Ellie's going the route through Fedra, through the training program to become a soldier. Riley is joining the Fireflies. The two girls don't have like a big kind of political difference of opinion. They've just chosen their different paths for their own reasons. And Riley has come back to see Ellie after kind of bolting on her, and Ellie being a little bit upset because she thought that they had something there. And the two go on an adventure through the mall. So we flash back between Ellie in the future destroyed mall and Ellie in the mall a more safe environment in a quarantine zone with Riley. And the two girls in the flashback sequence, they go into a costume shop and put on masks. They throw bricks at a car window and have a little contest. You can get trophies for breaking all the windows and beating Riley in the games. Riley produces some water guns and they have like a little water pistol fight. And it's all really cool. It's like low stakes, enjoyable Last of Us gameplay. Brings a little kind of levity to the overall heaviness of the game. Obviously, there is not a happy ending to this story, as we know already from Last of Us 1, that Riley doesn't make it, that Ellie's bitten, that Ellie is immune, that Riley isn't. And so there's a little bit of that too, but it ties up the loose ends of how Ellie got infected, a little bit of backstory. It introduces the idea that Ellie is gay, which is significant, as to have like a kind of a queer main character in a AAA game is cool, and has caused controversy later with assholes online who aren't into that. Everyone else obviously is cool with it, as one should be. But it's interesting. It shows you like the germination of Ellie as a character, as a queer individual, and as the infected immune character that we play as later. So it's a super cool, super well made DLC. Thoroughly recommended to go back to, even if you skipped it and went straight into The Last of Us 2. That is Left Behind. And after playing The Last of Us, it was such a difficult game to play. Like, it's heavy, the themes are heavy. There's not a lot of happiness to be found in this game. The central relationships are fraught. The psychology of the main characters is difficult. It's kind of a violent world that they inhabit. And so I decided to take a little bit of a break. I played some other games. I played some Coffee Talk. I played some Katamari Damacy, all of the games that were in the last episode. But The Last of Us is just a brilliant, well-made series. And so I felt the siren call of The Last of Us 2, especially as I had a couple of friends who were playing it. My friend Kieran Daly, who runs the Radical Art Review, he's a gamer and a friend. He was talking to me about Last of Us 2, just what a good time he was having playing it. I watched a couple of Twitch sessions of gameplay with Girl with Box, who is Danny, who lives out in New York City. She's at Girl with Box on Twitter, and enjoyed watching her play through. I dropped out whenever there was story because I didn't want spoilers, but I got to see a little bit of gameplay. And so, yeah, I went in, I bought it, payday came, Last of Us 2. And I'm going to have a little spoiler-free chat about that game. So you start off in Jackson. Some years later, Ellie's now in I'm going to say late teens. It's not entirely clear, but it's definitely just later. She's just a little more grown up. And some story shit goes down. Ellie leaves Jackson and goes off on adventures across America again. And the game picks up as you're approaching Seattle on horseback. I'm just going to talk about the little passage of play that happens between riding through the forest and arriving at Seattle and arriving at the gate to the city, or the gate to the kind of stronghold that you're aiming for. And the first thing that struck me playing Last of Us 2 was just what a visual upgrade it is. The graphics are off the chart good. It has that ray tracing technique and has really advanced lighting and rendering in the same vein. It looks visually similar to Control and to Jedi Fallen Order, in that it's motion captured, so the bodies and figures have a lot of realism and personality in their movement. The light is amazing. Like, as you're riding through the forest, the light kind of falls casts shadows, and Ellie's hair moves as she's riding. The horse animation is very good. I still say the best, most realistic horse animation is in Breath of the Wild, but it's pretty damn good here too. And we come across a highway and ride towards Seattle. And the next passage of play is like some sort of typical Last of Us scavenging, little bit of combat, sort of breaking into stores and picking up things. But there are some new mechanics to bear in mind too. Like Ellie can now break glass, so this opens up a lot of very easily missable environments. So if you're passing a store, there doesn't seem to be a way in. If you don't notice that like one glass window looks breakable, you might miss what's inside. And Last of Us 2 does a really good job of creating little subplots. So, there's a note somewhere that you find in a coffee house or something with a key to another store, so you can maybe go and find that store. The key doesn't work, you discover you can get in through the back, and in there you'll find notes that people have left for each other. And so there are all these little mini subplots and kind of interconnected elements, like rooms that you can get into, safes that you can crack if you've figured out the code. The code maybe is given to you in a clue that was left in a note on the fridge or the freezer of another house or something like that. And it's kind of urban environment exploration. It reminded me a little bit of Horizon Zero Dawn, when you're playing as Aloy and you get to what's it called again? Devil's Lust or something like that. It's a devastated city. As Ellie with her companion Dina, you're kind of doing the same kind of exploration. Really fun. Lots of little secrets to be found. Another change is that the map now, when you look at the map, you open it out, and Ellie holds it in her hands, and so you kind of look down at the map as if you're in the game. The reason that you need a map is that, Last of Us 1 didn't need a map because it was kind of a narrow corridor of play that was never wider than a few, 20, 30 meters, I think, if memory serves. But in this game, you will have more open world elements, so you have more opportunities to explore. It's still not a true open world game. Like you'll come up against kind of streets that are blocked by vans or areas that are blocked off by vegetation. So you're kind of hemmed in still. But it's like a few city blocks that you can explore, going in through windows, going in through back doors, riding across bridges, and there are trashed cars everywhere. There are details everywhere. It's like a remnant of a campfire, all this kind of thing. And so it's like a really cool development of the first game. As you progress, like you'll discover that the combat is also more advanced. They've retuned the weapons, they've retuned the listening system, the skill tree is different. There's a lot of kind of, it just feels like a huge upgrade on the first game visually, and in terms of the combat mechanics. Everyone loves the story of The Last of Us, but a lot of people were down on the combat compared to other games of the genre. The combat in this game feels a lot better. There are new mechanics, there are upgrades, it's a little more complex, a little more strategic and subtle, very well put together. I'm about halfway through The Last of Us now, so I don't have the full story, but when I do get it, I'm going to do a special episode with Danny, aka Girl with Box, because I enjoyed watching her play through so much, and I enjoyed her take on it, so we'll have a proper conversation with a post-game plot spoilers episode that will come up in the future. But for now, I'm having a great time with The Last of Us 2. It's a stunning game, really enjoying it, and really looking forward to seeing what decisions they make with the story and where the game takes me. There's a lot of controversy online. A lot of people, everyone who's played it has got strong opinions about it. Some people are saying it's a straight 10 out of 10. Some people are really not appreciating the story decisions that are taken. I'm still in the dark about what's going to come. I've avoided most spoilers. I had one major spoiler that I unfortunately got hit by before I started playing, but it was in the first hour of the game, I think. So the rest of the game is still stretched out before me. I'm going to be playing it across the next days, and yeah, I'll be looking forward to letting you know how it all went down. That was The Last of Us Part 2. If you've listened to the show before, you'll know that I usually end with some questions or a Q&A. I forgot to post out asking for questions this time. And to be honest, I don't know if that's the best use of this last part of the show. I'm still trying to figure out what the ideal format could be. But it is always nice to have a little bit of extra chat on the end here, so it's not just a straight reviews show. So I thought that for this episode, I might dip into Twitter and have a look at what the conversation's been like lately. There's been a couple of tweets that I put out over the last week that took off a little bit. The first one was, seeing as it was, halfway through the year, not long ago, I asked, what was your game of the year so far? This got like 53 retweets, 91 likes, and a whole bunch of replies from all over the game spectrum. But it was really interesting for me to flick through and see what everyone's been playing and what they've been excited by. A question that came up again and again was, do you mean a game that came out this year or a game that I finally got the chance to play this year? I did mean the former, but who cares? I said that anyone can say any game they like, really, but most people interpreted it as new games from this year. So let's have a little flick through and see what we said. Ghost in the Glass said it's hard to say, but probably Resident Evil 3. I haven't played Resident Evil 3, but I've heard some mixed reviews about that one. Like, some people seem to think it's amongst the best in the whole series, and others are really down on it. I'm not super into zombie games, despite my Last of Us recent history, but I would like to try one of the new games. I did play the first Resident Evil games on PS1 and enjoyed them. Next up, let's see. Old Gamer Gaming said that they've been playing Hollow Knight and Control on the PC. Both games that I've played and covered on the show, both games I really like too. There was a lot of love for Animal Crossing, a lot of love for the Final Fantasy remake, and a lot of love for The Last of Us Part 2 as well. Xenoblade Chronicles came up again and again. Grail 2013 said Xenoblade Chronicles or Asteroids. That's a classic choice. Switch Indie Fix said Underhero, to which I replied, I love it when someone just slaps down a game that absolutely no one else will vote for, because for me it's Kentucky Route Zero. Yeah, Kentucky Route Zero is easily my game of the year, but I think that not many people are on the same page with me there. Midwest Meltdown said The Last of Us 2 as well. Parabellum said Streets of Rage 4, that was a game that came up a few times. Let's have a look who this is. This is Zed Cummings. This is someone who's in our One Finish a Week thread. He said, so far it's probably between New Horizons and Final Fantasy. I can't give Game of the Year to The Last of Us Part 2 due to it having a pretty glaring flaw in story department that detracted from my overall enjoyment of the game. He's also expecting Ghost of Tsushima and Cyberpunk to be Game of the Year contenders. Abbey Light Studios said Hyper Light Drifter. It's not a game that I've covered on the show, although I have played it. I had a bit of a rage quit problem with a Hyper Light Drifter. I couldn't get past some of the bosses. The Tall Gaming Man said Last of Us Part 2. That Punk V, Final Fantasy, Animal Crossing. Becca Pride said Dreams. That was the only person who said Dreams, despite being a game that did seem to hit all of the major press. It wasn't so strong on this particular Twitter thread. John Lawless was another one to flag up Ghost of Tsushima and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, so there are games that people are still looking forward to this year. We're 6 months in, I guess Paper Mario is still to come as well. And there are rumours of Nintendo launching a bunch of Mario reissues for the Mario anniversary that could change some people's lists. But yeah, it looked like Final Fantasy Remake, Animal Crossing, Xenoblade Chronicles, Last of Us 2. Those were all the leading games. But I thought it was an interesting thread to do. There's lots of Streets of Rage 4. I'm just flicking through it now. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. That got a couple of shout-outs. Shantae. So yeah, some people interpreted it as whatever games they'd been playing this year. And as I'm doing the one finish a week challenge, I actually have a spreadsheet of all the games that I've finished this year. So I went in and took a little look at that to see how many of those games are 2020 games. And it looks like surprisingly few, especially if you don't count ports. So I've marked up all the ones that came out this year. To the Moon came out this year. That was a Switch port that I played, but I gave it a terrible review, so that's not making my list. I also have Wide Ocean Big Jacket. It's like a 2-hour kind of visual novel. Really fun, but it's not going to be blowing minds outside of, a small fun game that fans of the genre will enjoy. Kentucky Route Zero, even Kentucky Route Zero has been in development. It's episodic, so 4 out of 5 episodes were released in other years, and only episode 5 came out this year. But seeing as the TV edition is a 2020 release, I'm gonna give it a pass. And so Kentucky Route Zero is so far for me my game of the year, I think. I also played In Other Waters. That came out this year. That's actually a fantastic indie game, and I hope it doesn't get lost beneath the waves, pun intended, because In Other Waters was the most interesting indie release of 2020 for me. I have covered that in another episode if you want to hear more. And then I also played Telling Lies, Florence, and Ruiner, all of which are ports of games that came out in previous years, and then I played The Last of Us 2. So far for me, it's Kentucky Route Zero and The Last of Us 2. Kentucky Route Zero, I think, is one of my all-time favourite games, and I did play that this year. Last of Us 2, I'm halfway through, so it will be interesting to see come the end of the year which of those two gets to the top. Very different games, both very noteworthy. And yeah, a fun Twitter thread. And if you're interested in joining threads like that, pop over to @GamingInTheWild, join the conversation there. Always happy to hear from people who are listening, and to hear about if you think any games have been left off that list, then please tweet at me. You can also find me as Gaming in the Wild on Twitch if you'd like to follow. I've been streaming some Last of Us 2, I've been streaming some Abzu and Coffee Talk for relaxation breaks. Always streaming something every couple of days usually. I'm on Instagram @GamingInTheWild as well. I also run a small Discord server just for a few friends, a few gamer friends from Twitter, and a few real life friends. People just talk about games, mention their new podcasts and videos when they're going live. We do a little top 5s club. People talk about what their top 5 like Nintendo games or their top 5 open world games might be. If you're interested in joining that little Gaming in the Wild Discord server, just drop me a message anywhere, and I'll drop you an invite. It's an invite-only thing for now, just so it's a safe little corner of the internet. So, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope that the audio quality isn't too bad. I recorded this in the daytime, so there's a lot more activity than usual out in the street. I usually record at night, but I wanted to record this one during the daytime and get it out. So if you can hear the church bells of Reykjavik and the street life, then, I don't know, maybe it's just good ambience. If you didn't like it, then I'm sorry. I'll go back to recording at night if I get some complaints. Okay, that's our episode. Thank you for listening. I hope to speak to you all out there on the internet. Take care, and bye-bye.